Hi and welcome to week 2, Play and Pedagogy. I'd like to start by acknowledging the traditional owners and custodians of the land on which we meet today, the Whadjuk people, and pay my respects to elders past, present and emerging. I respect their cultural beliefs and their spiritual relationship with their country and recognise that these are still important to Whadjuk people today. Last week we looked at what is play, some classical perspectives on play, Hughes' taxonomy of play types, and developing our lenses on play. This week, our lecture is going to go through the neuroscientific perspectives, implications for play pedagogy, Bloom's taxonomy, and what else happens in play. And our tutorial will look at the developmental domains of play, review of the required readings, applying perspectives on play to planning, and any assessment 1 questions. Current contemporary knowledge about play really focuses on brain development. Brain development depends on both nature, your genes, and nurture, those early experiences. Brain architecture and developing skills and abilities are built in a hierarchical bottom-up sequence. And although each region is intimately connected, and as such, each region maintains a capacity to influence each other. The brain has 3 major regions or parts. Starting at the base, you can see there the brain stem is connected to the spinal cord at the bottom, and that's the cerebellum. The limbic system is in the middle, and the cerebral cortex at the top. Movement is looked at in the cerebellum. Your emotional experiences is the limbic system, and stimulation is in the cerebral cortex. Looking at a cerebellum perspective on play. Developing control of movement patterns is strongly related to cognitive development, with early movement experiences providing a foundation for critical thinking. The cerebellum fine-tunes sensory motor integration and plays a significant role in motor coordination and the coordination of cognitive functioning and thought processes. Therefore, exercise, movement, and play are essential to healthy child development. You want to provide sensorial experiences, movement experiences, and challenging and riskful experiences. A lymphatic perspective on play, that's going to be experience dependent, shaped through interactions and the environment. You can see there's attuned to attachment, there's ecological systems, and the social learning theory. It has to be child directive, intrinsically motivated, and it has those transferable skills of happiness, confidence, risk-taking. You've got to look at safe, secure relationships, providing enjoyable, pleasurable experiences, and play as a vehicle for emotional learning, being able to express, regulate, and learn about their emotions. Our most advanced cognitive abilities are dependent on the cerebral cortex. You're looking at memory, abstract thinking, planning, impulse control, decision-making, and goal-directed behaviour. All of those really important executive functions. These are enhanced by play and reinforce the synaptic connections in the brain, which is really important. Executive functioning skills are foundational for school readiness and academic success. So that's mandating a frame shift with regard to early education. And you can see there all the theorists looking at the perspective on play and cognition. You want to be able to look at creativity, providing engagement through focus, motivation, materials that are stimulating through maths and science pathways. Rushing early learning at the expense of play can harm and overwhelm the brain. The brain is in the formation phase from birth to 8 years, so play equals their really important learning. Developed by Benjamin Bloom in the 1950s as a way of expressing qualitatively different kind of thinking was Bloom's taxonomy. And it's now called taxonomy of cognitive objectives. It's been adapted for classroom use as a planning tool and continues to be one of the most universally applied models. It provides a way to organise thinking skills into 6 levels, from the most basic to the higher order levels of thinking. The categories can be thought as degrees of difficulties. That is, the first one must be mastered before the next one can take place. So you've got to be able to remember, to understand, to apply, to analyse, to evaluate, to create. This taxonomy is an authentic tool for curriculum planning, instructional delivery, and assessment. It can help us to think about, plan, and evaluate the experiences we provide in the environment and the questions that we ask by looking at them in the hierarchy. It gives teachers and students an opportunity to learn and practice a range of skills, including those thinking skills, and provides a simple structure for many different kinds of questioning and thinking. It is relevant and important at every age and stage, not just in the higher grade. It's just as important to remember during the early childhood years. Let's look at play using Bloom's taxonomy as a lens. Firstly, looking at imitation. So that's copying, remembering, it might be retelling a story. Understanding, that's really looking at interpreting, demonstrating, actively participating. Applying, demonstrating the use of knowledge, modifying what they have seen or heard, so it's executing. Analysing, organising, reconstructing, testing, uncovering, questioning, calculating a risk, investigating, inquiring, and again, actively participating. Evaluating, so that's going to look at hypothesising, critiquing, experimenting, judging, testing. Creating looks at designing, planning, construction, producing, inventing, making, and risk-taking. Think about brain development and the 3 areas of the brain discussed earlier while we take another look at Hughes' taxonomy of play. We've got the cerebellum, so that's movement. We've got the limbic system, emotional experiences. The cerebral cortex, stimulation. How do you look at these through exploratory play, fantasy play, mastery play, symbolic play? Let's look at locomotion play. The role of the educator within locomotion play is centred on the creation of a rich outdoor learning environment with ample opportunity to engage in physical play. That's developing our cerebellum. Risky play. To support risky play, the educator should provide a challenging, natural environment which provides for risk-taking. Rough and tumble play. The educator can support this type of play by discussing it with the children and identifying with them what the comfortable parameters of rough and tumble play are for the group collectively. In this way, boundaries can be established and owned by the children. We discussed a little bit about this in last week's tutorial. The environment that the educator provides also plays an important role here. A key consideration is the provision of space in the outdoor area for the scale of physical movement needed for rough and tumble play. In looking at object play, the role of the educator in object play starts with the provision of authentic objects which have weight, density, and volume in alignment. Natural materials are naturally authentic for this reason. Manufactured materials from synthetic substances often have their weight, density, and volume elements out of sync. As such, they require informed testing on the part of the educator before being incorporated into the environment. So you want to be able to bring in as many natural elements as you can, even if it means collecting from elsewhere. Next, in mastery play, the role of the educator within mastery play is to empower the children with the environment and support their sense of belonging and collective ownership. To engage in this type of play, the children have to have a sense of belonging with the environment, a sense that it is their environment and therefore a space which they are empowered to adapt and master. The limbic system is looking at dramatic play. When dramatic play occurs, the educator can observe it and use their observations to plan further play activities and experiences that are in line with these emerging interests and extend the child's social and emotional understanding of life events. In socio-dramatic play, the role of the educator within this type of play is twofold. Firstly, the environment should be designed with plentiful invitations and opportunities for social dramatic play. You're looking at cubby houses, a home corner, baby dolls, shop supplies, medical supplies, real-life dress-ups. They're all important environmental aspects of supporting this type of play. Secondly, this type of play offers insights into the inner emotional world of the child. Socio-dramatic play offers opportunities for observing and reflecting in order to build understanding of the child's perspective on issues. These reflections can be shared and cross-referenced with parents so that the child is supported. In looking at social play, the role of the educator when this type of play lies in joining the play and engaging in the discussions as they unfold. You want to support the choices of the children, even when they would have made a different choice. It's also important. Within social play, children need to design and resign the narrative, building their own experience of what works and doesn't work. In role play is play where the children explore aspects of life that are not intensely personal or interpersonal. So the examples of this play might include playing house by making food or sweeping up. This is different to playing house with a deep interpersonal narrative emerging. Other examples include answering the phone, driving a bus, doing the dishes, and engaging in interesting tasks that are an everyday part of life. This is the first type of imagination play-based play and occurs before the dramatic, socio-dramatic fantasy or imaginary play. It is developmentally aligned with the advent of symbolic play. A very small child would pick up a toy phone or a shoe and put it to his ear and say, "Hello." Next, looking at exploratory play, the educator can support this type of play with the provision of treasure baskets and fiddle toys. Objects of interest and unusual textures within the available resources should be provided. You're looking at loose materials that can be mouthed but are large enough not to pose a choking threat can also be provided. Supporting this type of play means allowing it to happen. This can involve watching so that safety is prioritised. It can also involve washing items after they've been mouthed to minimise the spread of germs. Next, we look at fantasy play. The first task of the educator in supporting fantasy play is now allowing enough time and space for it to deepen into play where the children construct a narrative. The provision of open and interpretable materials is really important. Pieces of material, one-size sticks, and a variety of interesting hats are always interesting additions to the dress-up box. Carrying out observations during fantasy play in order to better understand the children can provide interesting insights into the children's interests and desires. Where an educator feels comfortable joining in the play and contributing to the co-construction of a narrative, they should do so, as this role offers them the most opportunity to scaffold and extend without devaluing or interrupting the play. Recapitulative play, that's looking at observation, guiding, and support and provision. Cognitive play. In creative play, an educator needs to empower the children with time, space, and freedom to explore. The educator needs to provide interesting and diverse materials and allow freedom of access to them. Creative play is about self-expression and problem-solving. This is not present within educator-directed and managed craft activities. Creative play also offers the educator key opportunities for self-reflection on their level of comfort with the children taking control of the direction of the activity takes. Risky play, as mentioned before, it's to support risky play. The educator should provide a challenging, natural environment. In symbolic play, the role of the educator within symbolic play includes the provision of loose and interpretable materials. It's also important that the educator models that symbolic play themselves. When an educator observes a child using objects symbolically, they should support the child's symbolic representation by valuing it and responding in a similar vein. So, for example, a child picks up a stone and holds it to the ear like a telephone. The educator could pick up another stone and say, hello, and in this way, the educator meets a child within that child-initiated symbolic play. Again, exploratory play, as mentioned before, the educator can support this type of play with the provision of treasure baskets and fiddle toys, obviously with hygiene and risks assessed as well. In communication play, the role of the educator within communication play is to build communicative variety into their everyday. One popular example of communication play is mime. The educator can encourage the children to try to communicate without words, to play mimed guessing games or charades. Educators can also tell jokes and support the children's jokes and encourage performances and dramas, singing, rhyming, whispering games, pointing and gesturing in place of actually speaking. They may debate and argue. Modelling communication play can also help. Educators can introduce skipping games or games with word actions built into their structure. In looking at imaginative play, the role of the educator within imaginative play is to join in. So this type of play is really social in nature, involving multiple children in the co-construction of a narrative. They achieve this through engaged focus and concentration, as well as through the use of language, interpersonal communication, and negotiation skills. And all players have a democratic opportunity to contribute to the evolving narrative and help shape the play. With the educator in the role of a play participant, they too are afforded this opportunity. Each participant brings their own agenda in shaping the narrative and subsequently to the experience. The educator's agenda is treated with the same respect as each participant's agenda. The educator may choose what they wish to gain or contribute. They can use it as a participatory observation to better understand the children, or they can use it as an opportunity to build relationship with the children and foster connection. They can also use it to scaffold curricular learning as it involves and to extend the children's collaborative thinking. As we saw in the introductory vignette, this is a delicate process of engagement. You have any chance of success, and the educator must join the play as an equal. What else happens in play? Play produces positive chemicals, so the brain identifies play as pleasurable. It increases dopamine, endorphin, serotonin. Play provides ample opportunities for adults to scaffold the foundational motor, social and emotional, language, executive functioning, math, and self-regulation skills needed to be successful in an increasingly complex and collaborative world. Play helps to build the skills required for our changing world. Play also builds the safe, stable, and nurturing relationships that buffer against toxic stress and builds social emotional resilience. It builds synaptic mapping to authentic materials. The co-creation of knowledge is offered with play pedagogy. The extension and potential for growth that is offered by the knowledgeable educator. Intrinsic motivation builds. So as you can see, lots of things happen in play. Let's have a look at the summary of week 1 and 2. Classical theories to contemporary theories. So from care to education. Originally, classical play theory focused on physical, emotional, and social development. So you're looking at care. This then evolved in what is known as contemporary play theory. Contemporary play theory expanded on a knowledge of play to include cognitive development, and thus proved that play was really vital within children's learning. That's looking at our education. Current knowledge links development and learning, care, and education as an integrated and unified process, involved being, becoming, and belonging. Links to educational policy trends are emerging and deepening, and research continues. We'll look at the last point, that link to education policy trends and emerging and deepening, next week. I'd like to finish with a little poem. I tried to teach my child with books. He gave me only puzzled looks. I tried to teach my child with words. They passed him by often, unheard. Despairingly, I turned aside. How shall I teach this child? I cried. Into my hand he put the key. Come, he said, play with me. In the tutorial this week, we will look at different areas for play in the classroom and the learning that occur. See you then.